Raj Shamani and myself, around the beginning of this year, we were creating motivational reels on Instagram.
Right.
And we were getting heavily criticized after a point. Ki, how dare you spread toxic positivity? How dare you spread hustle culture?
You know what? I don't think information is the problem anymore. I think it is about developing the state of mind where all that information can stick. That is the challenge today. Retention, appreciation of what you have. The problem was access to information. But now there is an excess of information available. So information is no longer the problem. The problem is, what do we do with all this information? So then you might equate something very useful with something not useful and say दोनों YouTube पे है, क्या ही फर्क पड़ता है?
100%. We have a common friend, my brother Raj Shamani. I'm sure you've been on his podcast as well, right? Raj Shamani and myself, around the beginning of this year, we were creating motivational reels on Instagram.
Right.
And we were getting heavily criticized after a point. Ki, how dare you spread toxic positivity? How dare you spread hustle culture? We weren't. Both of us have come up the hard way. We're both self-made dudes. We've really kind of worked our way to the top, and we're sharing what we've learned over the years. Now, if you are aggressive about reaching the top, there is a certain level of aggression you need at the bottom also. And those were the things we were trying to put out in the world. Keeping this in mind, I want to highlight this one podcast I found on Spotify around the same time. So the podcast is called Yours Mentally Podcast, run by teenagers. Love it. Love it for the same reason you love it, that mental health is being spoken about so much. But they're speaking about it a lot from the software perspective, which is also okay. Almost no episode, at least early on, was addressing the hardware side of things, was addressing mental fitness, or what we call mental toughness, which you hear the superstars of the world speak about. Be it David Goggins, be it Joe Rogan, be it Kevin Hart, be it Indra Nooyi, be it the CEO we've had of show, Radhika Gupta. Everyone's highlighted mental fitness, mental toughness. What I love about this show is that they're spreading knowledge and they're curious to learn more. And the teenagers, I wasn't thinking like this when I was a teenager. Incredible. But what I learned later on in life is that when you're going very deep into a subject, it's also wise to take a step back and see it from another lens. Definitely see it from the lens of modern day therapists, but also see it from the lens of modern day neurologists, the hardware of the mind. But I want to highlight the hardware side of things. For example, let me read out some of the early topics, okay? Anxiety in teenagers, teen relationships and infatuation, insomnia and sleep cycles, gaming and mental health, dysfunctional families, gaslighting, toxic positivity. The episode I'd heard at that time.
Topics, yeah.
And they had said, oh, there are Instagram influencers who spread toxic. And it was obvious that they were talking about Raj Shamani and myself. Right. You're 19 years old. Life is going to hit you in many ways over the next 10 years. Your perspectives are going to change. You're going to completely be a different person by the time you're 22. By the time you're 25, you're going to be a third kind of person. 29, fourth kind of person. Over the course of these years, from the age of 18 to 28, I have gotten very deep into the hardware side of things. And only recently, because of podcasts like this, I got into the software side of things.
Yeah.
But the hardware side of things has honestly protected me. The software side has educated me. The hardware side has protected
That's
me.
a lovely way of putting it.
Yeah. And the protection is what you need to attack also. First, learn to defend yourself. Learn to have an armor on. Then you'll figure out how to use a sword also.
When I hear of teenage angst and the issues that they go through, I kind of see it from a historical perspective, because every time you see a pendulum swing extremely onto one side, it is probably because it was on the other extreme a few years ago. So if you take 50, 60, 100 years back, teenage anxiety was a dismissed topic. इसमें कुछ है ही नहीं, क्या है, बच्चा है, चुपचाप करो, जो बोला है करो. So every pendulum that is on the extreme was on the opposite extreme before. And this is a reaction. So the problem in our conversation is that how do we find nuance? How do we find the middle ground between hardware and software? How do we find the middle ground between discipline and empathy? Because now we are stressing too much on the empathy side of it. Feel more, feel what the other person is going through. Feel sorry for them. Great. Because the pendulum was on the other extreme. No empathy. Fuck that. Ye life hai, karna hi chahiye. But how do we balance empathy and discipline? Because if you take out one, life is fucked. Either one. That's the weird thing. And the reason that society was so focused on discipline before is because I feel empathy is a luxury. whereas discipline is not. You need to work in order to get shit done. Whether you feel sorry or not is not the point. You need to get shit done, otherwise we will not survive. But as we evolve as a society, I think we have been afforded the luxury of empathy. Now we can work and still feel things, which is great. But we need to bring discipline back.
But what I'll also highlight is Gen Z. I've seen two distinct types of kids nowadays. So the two distinct types are, one, hustlers, self-improvement, all forms, fitness, spirituality, entrepreneurship, personal finance, all of it, becoming a better human.
Sure.
Second one doesn't care. Second one's like, yeah, whatever, cool. But all of them are extremely sensitive, which has its pros and cons. The pros are that the world is becoming more empathetic. The con is that where do you draw the line in terms of taking offense towards small things, which is why cancel culture has even risen as a thing. Basically, this is the first generation of human beings that has had this level of information since the time they were babies, right? So they are very, very aware of things, and that awareness has caused an increased level of sensitivity. But what they don't understand is the older generations haven't lived in the same world that they live. So they view things slightly differently. Older generations sometimes enjoy darker humor. You know, when was the last time you saw a great comedy film? For us, it's Hangover for our generation in 2008, 2009. I'm talking about English comedy. You go see that film now, they wouldn't be able to make that film today. Joe Rogan keeps talking about
Most
that.
of it, yes.
Tropic Thunder, Hangover.
Friends wouldn't have been possible. Seinfeld wouldn't have been possible.
Yeah. So the whole world definitely has become more empathetic, and people care about causes, which is fantastic. The environment, mental health. But it's sort of also become what we call snowflake society. Extremely sensitive.
Yeah.
What do you think is happening to the human brain? Like, why is that generation being like this right now? I think it's an outcome of teenage, and I think they'll change over time. This particular generation, they go all in on their feelings. So if they love you, you're their god. And if they hate you, they will go to any degree to bring you down.
This is a lovely thought process that what are you threatened by? The idea of being threatened hasn't changed. The biology of being threatened hasn't changed. It's just what are you threatened by? 10,000 years ago, you're threatened by a tiger. Some animal is coming to kill me. So how do I escape it, or how do I kill it? As time goes, the same biology, but the focus of that threat is different. It could be an army. It could be an angry brother. It could be somebody coming at you with a knife. Now it is a tweet. It's a concept. It is abstract. Abstract things are threatening me now. So in a way, if you study what has been threatening you, we are actually studying the evolution of humankind. Because we are going away from animals into concept constructs threatening you. So a monkey cannot get threatened by the idea that somebody tweeted something. Right? The tweet doesn't exist, the concept doesn't exist, the story doesn't exist. But now we are getting threatened by just abstract things. Hawe mein, on the Wi-Fi, some unknown stranger said some unknown things in a language you didn't even know. Somebody translated it, you are angry, cancel it. So in a way it is evolution, but we have to understand that free speech is what leads to communication. Free speech is what led us till here. So I'm against cancel culture. I believe that every time it should be a conversation, especially for artists. Because art has the responsibility of figuring out what else can we do. Because art is basically creation, and you cannot create perfectly. Creation means messing up. Creation means figuring out the 10 things that doesn't work. So I feel that cancelling an artist, I feel, is counterproductive to our own evolution.
And most cancel culture happens because of teenagers. This is one thing I've observed. But what they need to understand about biology is that your brain is still being molded right up to the age of 25.
Even beyond.
Even beyond?
Yeah.